A few weeks ago, Caitlin Flanagan of The Atlantic penned an article entitled Independent Schools Are Indefensible. She was focusing on the most elite private schools and alluding to the fact that it's just absolutely ridiculous in the amount of resources that these kids have access to. He talks about the fact that private school students end up at elite universities at far greater percentages than their public school counterparts. And she talks about kind of the, essentially fake, inauthentic claims about equity that these schools purport, whereas in reality, they're can cost upwards of $54,000 a year, which doesn't seem like a way of really creating equity among students. What I want to focus on is the fact that these schools, the idea that they're good is like an interesting question, because it's like, yes, they are highly ranked, just like the Ivy League schools in college, like in the college list of the best rankings in the country. They're considered the best, but in both cases, they are cherry picking students who are basically pre-built. Like the idea that the classroom discussions and everything, it's great to cross pollinate and put students together who are bright and curious, but in these cases, these students are also extremely well resourced, and therefore the idea that these schools are fundamentally changing a student's trajectory through education is just kind of a laughable idea, really. In that sense, I think even school at the highest level isn't really all about like changing a student's abilities in reading and math. I see it all the time with students who are going to some of the best private schools in the country, that they really do have like big gaps along those lines. I mean, it boils down to simple realities that like putting a bunch of kids in a classroom and trying to teach them to read is silly, because why would they pay attention to reading when they could be paying attention to each other? So we get stuck in all this elitism and focus on how there's private schools that are unfair, but really the whole system is creating this situation where colleges are going to be favoring students who have these kind of rich backgrounds, where they do a ton, especially as schools go test optional and people try to believe it, even though we already see that as the results come out, top schools are generally only taking students who have taken the test. But we find still that there is a focus on intellectual vitality, which is fantastic, and grades, which I don't think is so fantastic because of the vast divide in students who are benefiting from the pandemic, where basically students from affluent backgrounds got good grades, and then meanwhile students from poor backgrounds did not. So in that context, it's nice to focus on things like intellectual vitality, but students from private schools, as the article kind of gets into, they have just a bounty of possibilities in terms of how to build their case, and obviously teachers and counselors who are far more able to write very personalized recommendations. So I think it's just important that, going off of the article and the book, that we also keep in mind that the whole system needs to change, and it's not just private schools that she claims are indefensible.